Hello viewers, I am Dr. N.B. Shama Bharati, lecturer in English. In this video, I am presenting an essay, A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This is the prescribed topic for 5th SEM Special English students. The objectives of this essay are to study women's identity in the writings of Virginia Woolf, to study women's contribution in English literature, and to study how Virginia Woolf worked to reform women's conditions through her works. Next, now we can see what are the outcomes of this essay. First, the readers will understand about the opportunities and respect the women have gained. Even the students will notice that financial freedom is all about a sense of equality and identity for women in society. Finally, higher level of female education and literacy leads to equal opportunity in society. Let us know about the author, Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf was born in London. She spent her most of the time by interacting with intellectuals. Virginia Woolf was an English author, feminist, essayist, publisher, and critic, and also known as one of the foremost modernists of 20th century. She is placed among great literary giants like T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, and James Joyce. Virginia Woolf became one of the members of Bloomsbury Group. She was relentlessly a creative writer in search of new literary terms. Now let us know about Virginia Woolf's famous novels. The first one is A Voyage Out, the first novel. It was written during a period in which Woolf was suffering psychologically and suffered from the period of depression. At one point attempted suicide. The second novel is A Night and Day. She wrote this novel when it was unusual for women to think about jobs and career. It's a social comedy which explores the boundaries of personal freedom. The third one is The Jacob's Room. It's an experimental novel. In this novel, Woolf employed stream of consciousness narrating the thoughts that are experienced both consciously and unconsciously. The fourth one is The Room of One's Own. It's a women polemic. In this novel, she expresses that women need financial freedom and a room in order to gain intellectual freedom. The next one is the Mrs. Dalloway. In this novel, is embedded with feminism with perfect blend of artistic and emotional values. The next one is The Lighthouse, the most famous novel and also autobiography. It deals with the unresolved issues concerning both parents. The last one is The Waves. It's a masterpiece. She wrote everything, witnessing the atrocities that occurred during World War. Among these famous novels, our today's topic is A Room of One's Own. This essay is based upon series of lectures on women and fiction delivered at Newham and Girton colleges. The lectures she delivered on this topic were collected as six-part essay. The very title comes from Virginia Woolf's conception that a woman must have money and room to facilitate their writings. In this essay, she emphasizes more on women education. She creates fictional characters named as Mary Baton, Mary Satan, Mary Carmichael, as she doesn't want to target anybody. In this essay, she also visits many fictional places and also interacts with fictional people. Our prescribed topic in this six-part essay is the fifth chapter. But before going into fifth chapter, we should know even the contents of the previous chapters which are connected to each other. In this first chapter, Virginia Woolf, she created a fictitious character by name Mary Baton. So, Mary Baton explains some incidents which led her to express that women need a room and money to write fictions. One morning, Mary Baton sits on the banks of the river Oxbridge by thinking about the topic women and fiction. With those thoughts, immediately she rises up and walks on the grass. Suddenly, her thoughts were intervened by Beadle, a god who stops her not to walk on the grass. Then, immediately interrupted with the thoughts, she goes to the library to collect the information for her topic. But she was not allowed, as she should come with a scholar or to get an introduction letter. She was very much disappointed with that, and she comes out of the library, and at that time she listens to the music which is coming from the nearby church. But again, she was interrupted with the luncheon bell, where she observes everybody is having grand food with wine. At that time, again she recalls the dinner at Fernham College for Women, which was beef and prunes. This contrast leads to the thoughts about rich food served for men, but very poor food for women. Here you can see the slide, in this slide, the lines. The lamp in the spine does not light on beef and prunes. Here the lamp means the intelligence of everybody will not be highlighted or improved by having poor or malnutritious food. Then she also says that fictions here likely to contain more truth than facts. Whatever she is writing here with the name of narrator Baton, she says that there is lots of truth in her words, what she is observing. And she also expresses that one cannot think well, love well, and sleep well if one has not dined well. As in those days, for women, there was not much importance and no encouragement, and moreover, they have very poor food also. And she also says that lies will flow from my lips, but there may be some truth mixed up with them. As these are the fictitious characters and the places, there may be added some lies, but for everything the truth is mixed up. So like this, she concludes her chapter 1 with lots of disappointment, as there is no encouragement for women in those days. In this chapter, Virginia Woolf shows the disparity between men and women. She recollects the previous day's incidents, and which prompts the question in her mind that why did men drink wine and whereas women drink water? Entirely one sex prosperous and others are remaining poor. She also expresses that the labor done by women is less valuable than men. Then she visits British Library and finds all books written by men on women and no book by women on men. She looks at one book entitled Women Morally Weak, Physically Weak and Psychologically Weak, which made her angry, and remembers the writings of the women writers who are always against men, as men always feel superior upon the inferiority of women. Next, the fictitious character Baton's thoughts are again interrupted by the arrival of the restaurant bill, which she pays by using the money which was inherited from her aunt's property, as she died while riding the horse, when women were given right to vote at that time. The final line, the image of women as mirror that makes a person look larger than really they are, used to make the point more concrete. In this chapter, Mary Baton thinks why there are no women writers in Elizabethan period. As Elizabethan age is a golden age, and this age is also flourished with literature. This is also the age of male dominism, and nobody likes to read women writings, as they feel there is no maturity in their writings. She also says that in their writings, imaginatively, there is a highest importance for women, but practically the significance is incomplete. In this context, Mary Baton, she creates a fictitious sister for Shakespeare, that is Judith Shakespeare. Shakespeare had his schooling, studied Latin, grammar, logic, he became an actor and lived in the hub of universe and got access to Queen, but Judith, who is very talented but faced much gender discrimination, and at the end killed herself. It doesn't mean girls are not genius, but they remain insane. That's why here the context shows what would have happened had Shakespeare had a gifted sister called Judith. This is completely about Judith Shakespeare. Then we can also see if ever a mind was incandescent. Here the mind emits the lights when it is heated with intelligence. It also shines with genius. The genius can only be expressed fully if it is unimpeded. In this chapter, we can see the women writers ventured to write. In Elizabethan age, talented women were not recognized, and even Queen Elizabeth was the ruler. In those days, only aristocratic women wrote fiction, not poetry or drama, as they don't have guidance or training to write. And only aristocratic women because they have time, leisure, and money. In 18th century, Margaret, Dorothy, Osborne, the women writers began to emerge. They wrote letters, but those were not recognized. And in 17th century, April Ben, she started writing for her survival. She belongs to middle class. She expressed her true feelings by not hiding anything. In the first line, we can say, Woolf continually comes back to her main idea that money is an essential part of allowing men to write great fictions. She makes the point that getting money for something legitimizes that very thing. Therefore, the more women are paid for their writing, the more it will be accepted as literature. And we can sum up that women constantly snubbed and lectured and forced to prove herself. Even the writers like Jane Austen, Emily Bront, Charlotte Bront are miraculous writers of this age. They maintained integrity in following the criticism, opposition, and understanding. In this chapter, Mary Baton goes to library to read the books of living authors. Baton now speaks about writing in her own century. She notes that now women write more than just novels and that women do almost as much writing as men. She invents an imaginary author, Mary Carmichael, and analyzes her book by name Life's Adventure. She observes the sentences which do not flow well. Her scenes do not proceed in an order. The author has broken the sentence and the sequence. However, Carmichael has every right to do this if she does them not for the sake of breaking, but for the sake of creating. So, by thinking this, she reads on. She comes to the sentence, Chloe liked Olivia, and realizes women usually don't like each other in literature. It was portrayed like that. They are jealous of each other and also shown in live love triangles with men and always in relation to men. But in Carmichael's novel, two women are friends and colleagues and share a laboratory in which they work together on medical research. Many great male writers had some need of and dependence upon certain persons of the opposite sex. these men surely got more from women. Men and women both have creative power, but women's creative power differs greatly from the creative power of men. Women writers like Carmichael are better suited to tell the stories of women than are men. But they can also help to present a more complete picture of men by writing about men from a women's perspective. Like this, the narrator concludes that Mary Carmichael's novel is not a work of genius, but she doesn't view men as an opposing faction, as the previous writers they did in their writings. She only has a tinge of the fear of previous women authors. She writes as a woman has forgotten that she is a woman. In time, with a room of one's own and 500 a year, Carmichael may write an even better writings. Like this, she gives her an impression why women need a room and money to give her opinions in the form of writings. In this last chapter, Virginia Woolf expresses her opinions through the fictitious character Mary Baton. One morning, Mary Baton wakes up and she watches the people in the street. She observes two people, men and women, traveling together, working together, and going by the same taxi. This becomes an image of what she thinks need to happen in the mind in order to produce great writings. In these lines, we can see the marriage of opposites, as Mary refers to the marriage of male and female parts of the brain. If these two parts don't work together, the brain will be too female or too male, both which diminish the greatness of the writers. However, men have doubled down on their masculinity because women are demanding their rights and want to live more equitably with men. This has made women's writing poorer because they are in opposition to womanly part of their own minds. At last, she says that it is fatal for anyone who writes to think of their sex. At the end of the essay, Woolf assumes the control of the voice again and sums up her argument by drawing the pivotal point which she used to go on reminding about the material things like money and a room of one's own to the ability to produce the work of genius. At the end of this essay, Woolf assumes control of the voice again and sums up her argument by drawing a straight line from material things like money and a room of one's own to the ability to produce work of genius. That's why she follows the statement, women had not led a chance of writing poetry, and she ends with, that is why I have laid a stress on money and a room of one's own. The complete essay centers around the basic needs of women to create her own literary work. According to Virginia Woolf, a woman requires financial independence and privacy to write the essay. To justify this point, she goes on giving numerous instances to make her idea a valid one.